Okay, let's dive right in. Ever stop to think how often we limit ourselves, with that thought, oh, that's impossible.
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
Right, and imagine someone uh, being so determined they actually, cut that word out of their dictionary. And get this, what if your brain, what if it's not just for thinking, but it acts like a radio, constantly sending and receiving thoughts?
It's a pretty wild idea to start with. And what's really compelling is where these ideas come from. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. It came out way back in 1937, but wow, it's influenced so many people.
Exactly. And this wasn't just, one person's random theory. Hill apparently studied the lives of over 500 people. 500.
Yeah, individuals who built incredible wealth, often starting from, well, pretty much nothing.
And the book lays out these principles almost
Yeah.
like laws of nature, suggesting that if you understand them, if you apply them, you really can shape your financial future. He even knew some of these people personally, right?
Yeah,
Had that direct access.
that's the claim. And thinking about your time, well, this deep dive, it's designed to be your efficient guide. We're pulling out the core insights, the actionable stuff, those real aha moments for you.
Yeah, save you wading through the whole thing yourself, maybe?
Our mission is really just to help you get the essence of this philosophy because it's pretty influential.
So if that's the goal, achieving wealth, where does Hill say you should start? What's step one?
Well, it all kicks off with cultivating what he calls a burning desire for something definite.
Not just a wish, then.
No, not at all. It's this deep, intense longing. And crucially, for a goal that's really, really clearly defined.
That word definite seems key, doesn't it? It's not just, yeah, I want to be rich.
Right. You need a crystal clear picture of what that wealth actually means for you.
And the book makes a pretty bold claim here that when nature, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, sees that kind of intense, specific desire, it basically ignores the word impossible.
Your conviction becomes a force in itself almost. Uh-huh. And he even gives like 6 specific steps,
Yeah.
a process to turn that desire into actual money.
Okay, now I know that might sound a bit magical, wishful thinking,
Yeah, what it.
but he really emphasizes the role of your imagination and maybe more importantly, a deep, profound belief that you can actually achieve it. You have to fuel that desire until it's like white hot. You have to believe the money's coming,
Which brings up this idea of practical dreamers. That's a great phrase.
isn't it?
People who don't just dream, but they actually, translate those visions into action. He was writing after the Depression, and he suggests those huge economic shifts were actually creating massive opportunities.
For people with that mindset,
Yeah.
he talks about a new race emerging with huge fortunes waiting for those with new ideas and a really clear, definitive purpose.
Knowing exactly what you want and having that burning drive.
Yeah. And he also throws in that you need tolerance and an open mind,
Yeah.
to actually see and grab those new chances.
It makes sense. He even looks back at history, doesn't he? Mentions people like Columbus or Copernicus.
Dreamers who saw things differently.
Exactly. They had that powerful desire, that unwavering belief, even when everyone else thought they were crazy. They just kept going.
Okay, so we've got this burning desire ignited. What's the next big step, according to Hill?
It's faith. And he describes it really powerfully, calls it the head chemist of the mind.
That paints a picture. So faith isn't just hoping?
No, it is presented as an active ingredient, something you mix into your thoughts. The idea is when you combine faith with your dominant thoughts, your subconscious mind picks up these thought vibrations
Right.
and then transmits them to what he calls infinite intelligence. It's like tuning your mind to the right frequency for your goals.
And he says strong emotions can amplify this, like love and even sex energy.
Yeah, maybe a bit surprising, but he argues that these powerful positive emotions, when you blend them with faith, they seriously boost those thought vibrations you're sending out.
So it's about harnessing these really basic human drives and pointing them towards your goals.
Pretty much. And then he gets practical. How do you actually develop this faith? He says it's through autosuggestion.
Okay, so what's that exactly? Like affirmations?
Basically, yeah. Repeatedly telling yourself, affirming your desires, giving instructions to your subconscious mind over and over again.
So if your goal is turning that desire for money into reality, You've got to actively use autosuggestion, really impress those ideas deep down.
He's very specific about it. He even advises reading the chapter on autosuggestion out loud every single night.
Wow, every night.
Until you build this deep, unshakable conviction. It's about intentionally programming that inner certainty.
Okay, desire, faith. But you can't just wish your way there, right? You need actual know-how.
Absolutely. The next principle is specialized knowledge, and he makes a really clear distinction here.
Between just knowing random facts and
having specific, organized knowledge that's directly useful for what you want to achieve. General knowledge alone, he says, isn't much help for accumulating wealth.
So it's not just what you know, but how you organize it and use it.
Exactly. The organization and application are critical. He gives this example of a silent salesman scrapbook.
Oh yeah, the bookkeeping system guy.
That's the one. Someone compiled everything, info, testimonials into this killer presentation. It wasn't just knowledge, it was packaged knowledge. And it worked. He got tons of clients.
It's about showing the value compellingly.
Which leads to this idea of becoming a merchandising specialist for yourself, for your own skills, crafting a persuasive case for what you offer.
Like that story about the mother who made a whole plan book for her son, like 50 pages.
Yeah, a detailed plan to market his services right out of college. And it apparently worked incredibly well. It highlights how powerful it is to clearly define and present your value.
And he even suggests there's a growing need for people who can help others do this, maybe even forming a mastermind alliance around it.
Right, which we'll get to. And the fee structure he mentions, often a percentage of the client's increased pay, really underscores that it's all about delivering measurable value.
Okay, desire, faith, specialized knowledge. But where do the actual plans come from? How do you figure out how to use that knowledge?
That's where imagination comes in. He calls it the workshop of the mind.
The place where plans are created.
Exactly. And he breaks it down, interestingly, into two types. There's synthetic imagination.
It was like rearranging old ideas, mixing and matching concepts we already know.
Right. Combining existing things in new ways. But then there's creative imagination.
And that's the more mysterious one.
Yeah, he presents it as a more direct link to that infinite intelligence idea, the source of totally new insights, brand new ideas, real breakthroughs.
So those sudden flashes of inspiration, those hunches, they come through this creative channel, especially when your mind is buzzing, maybe fueled by that strong desire.
That seems to be the idea. And to make this concrete, he tells that amazing story about the enchanted kettle.
The Coca-Cola origin story.
Can you believe it? Just an idea apparently sparked by imagination, backed by only $500.
And it turned into this global empire. Because of that unique, secret formula, the result of that initial creative spark.
Incredible. And he mentions others, too, like Woolworth's 5 and 10 cent store, another massive fortune starting from just one imaginative idea.
The message is pretty clear then. Ideas are the starting point for all fortunes. Imagination is crucial.
But an idea alone isn't enough, is it? You need structure.
Right. Which brings us to organized planning. And this is where that mastermind principle really comes into focus.
Yeah, it's vital. He defines the mastermind as an alliance of two or more minds working in perfect harmony for a definite purpose.
And the core idea is that no single person has all the answers, right? You need other people.
Absolutely. No one has enough knowledge, experience, imagination on their own to guarantee building a huge fortune. You need collaboration, you need different perspectives.
That's the power of the mastermind group. You get that mix of viewpoints, shared experience, combined brain power.
To create and refine your plans. And he stresses that the plans need to be jointly created and approved within the group. Everyone needs to be on board.
Okay, but what if the first plan fails? Or the second?
Then you make another one. That's where persistence kicks in again. He uses Thomas Edison as the prime example.
The 10,000 tenths of the light bulb.
Exactly. He calls those temporary defeats, not failures. You learn, you adapt, you create new plans, and you just keep going.
And he contrasts that with Henry Ford, saying Ford's success wasn't necessarily about being smarter,
but about sticking to a sound plan, adopting it and following through relentlessly. Consistent strategic effort.
Speaking of effort, you eventually have to stop planning and just decide.
Yeah.
You have to act.
Yes. The next principle is decision. And oh boy, does he emphasize this one. Acting decisively, sticking to your choices.
He really contrasts that with procrastination, doesn't he?
Massively. He basically says successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if ever, whereas failures, well, they dither, they pass the buck. Indecision is painted as a huge cause of failure.
And he uses that incredibly powerful historical example, the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Right, 56 people making a definitive choice, knowing it could literally cost them their lives. Talk about a high-stakes decision.
And their prompt, resolute action changed everything.
And Hill argues that this monumental act, this birth of a nation, was itself the result of a mastermind group making a definite decision. He draws a direct line.
You want personal success. You need that same kind of courage and decisiveness.
Okay, make decisions, got it. But the road isn't always smooth sailing after that, is it?
Not at all. And that's exactly why the next principle is persistence, that sustained, unwavering effort you need to keep going, to build faith, to reach your goal.
He calls it an almost unstoppable force when you combine strong willpower with that burning desire we talked about earlier.
An irresistible combination, and he acknowledges people with huge persistence might seem, well, maybe a bit cold-blooded sometimes.
Because they're just so focused. Exactly. It's just a reflection of their unwavering commitment. He brings up Henry Ford again here, persisting through all sorts of opposition and criticism.
And he actually lists out factors that help build persistence, doesn't he? Like 8 things.
He does. Things like definiteness of purpose, knowing what you want, strong desire, self-reliance, having definite plans, accurate knowledge, cooperation, that mastermind thing again, willpower, and making persistence a habit.
That's quite a checklist.
Yeah.
And he also lists the opposites. Symptoms of lacking persistence.
Yeah, like procrastination, indecision, having no real interest in getting specialized knowledge, making excuses, being too easily satisfied, blaming others, weakness of desire. It's like a self-inventory tool. He encourages you to be really honest with yourself about where you might be falling short.
Okay, we mentioned the mastermind before, but he revisits it when talking about power, right?
Yes, but he defines power differently here. It's not just authority. It's organized and intelligently directed knowledge.
Organized knowledge put to work.
Precisely. And he talks about 3 main sources for that knowledge. There's infinite intelligence again.
Right.
There's accumulated experience just learning from life. And then there's experimentation and research. Deliberately seeking knowledge.
And he seems to think that infinite intelligence, while maybe a bit abstract, is the most reliable source. Accessible if you apply the other principles.
That's the suggestion. He even talks about this great unseen stream of power, which is essentially your thinking process.
So positive thoughts align you with that power, leading towards wealth.
And negative thoughts pull you the other way, towards poverty. It's about the direction of your mental energy.
Right. Now, the next step he outlines is, well, it's probably the one that raises the most eyebrows today. The mystery of sex transmutation.
Yeah, it definitely sounds provocative, but it's important to understand what he means by it. It's not literally about sex itself.
It's about redirecting that energy, right?
Yeah.
Shifting the mind away from purely physical expression towards other things.
Exactly. Towards creativity, towards ambition. He calls it the 9th step to riches. He argues that sex energy is the most powerful human emotion, this incredibly potent force.
And the idea is to harness it, to transmute it, as he says.
Yes, to fuel things like creativity, courage, willpower, persistence, enthusiasm. He observes that often highly successful people, especially in fields like sales or leadership, seem to possess this strong underlying drive.
And he connects it to personal magnetism, that charisma some people have.
He does, suggesting it stems from this energy and can be cultivated and projected through things like your handshake, your tone of voice, posture, even just the vibe you give off your thought vibrations and your appearance.
So great salespeople might be unconsciously or maybe consciously channeling this energy into their enthusiasm and persuasiveness.
That's the theory he puts forward. It's about redirecting a powerful drive into a different kind of power.
Okay, moving on from that interesting topic. The next principle is the subconscious mind.
Ah, yes, the transmitting station of the brain, as he calls it, working 24/7, whether you're aware of it or not.
And the key takeaway is it just acts on whatever you feed it most consistently.
Pretty much. It takes your dominant thoughts, the ones you dwell on, and works to make them real. Doesn't matter if they're positive or negative, constructive or destructive, which makes it crucial to be mindful of your habitual thoughts.
So you need to consciously feed it positive affirmations, desires, the stuff you want it to work on.
Exactly. And again, emotions are key. He highlights faith, love, and that sex energy as the most powerful positive emotions for influencing the subconscious.
And warns strongly against the negative impact of fear and doubt, because the subconscious will act on those too if they dominate.
What you consistently feel and believe really shapes what your subconscious brings about.
Which leads nicely back to that analogy he uses, the brain as a broadcasting and receiving station.
Right, he elaborates on that. Draws a direct parallel with radio technology, which was still relatively new and exciting back then.
So the idea is our brains send out thought vibrations and receive them too, through the ether, he calls it.
Yeah, like radio waves.
Yeah.
And he positions the creative imagination as the brain's receiving set, tuning into thoughts released by other minds, or maybe from that infinite intelligence.
And emotions are the amplifiers again.
Always. Strong emotions boost the signal, making your thoughts more powerful when broadcast, and making your receiver more sensitive. Which connects back again to sex transmutation. He suggests it increases the vibrational frequency of the mind, making it a better broadcaster and receiver.
So broadcasting effectively means mixing thought with strong feeling and consciously giving it to the subconscious.
That's the method. And he emphasizes it's actually quite simple to operate this mental station using desire, the subconscious, creative imagination, and autosuggestion together. He even notes that science was just starting to get interested in the brain's potential back then.
Okay, we're nearing the peak now. The final principle, the 13th step, is the sixth sense.
He calls this the apex of the whole philosophy, the ultimate channel through which infinite intelligence communicates voluntarily, gives you guidance.
So it's like supercharged intuition?
Kind of.
Fair.
He describes it as a part of the subconscious, linked to creative imagination. It's where those hunches, inspirations, intuitive flashes come from, seemingly out of nowhere.
But you don't just get it automatically. You have to master the other 12 principles first.
That's the idea. Mastery comes through applying all the other steps, and through practices like meditation, developing your mind.
And this sixth sense can apparently give you warnings, tell you about opportunities.
Yes, act like an inner radar. He even uses the term guardian angel for how it might feel for those who develop it.
And didn't the author himself have a weird practice for this? Meeting with invisible counselors?
He did. He shares that he held imaginary meetings with historical figures he admired as a way to stimulate his own sixth sense and get insights. He's clear they were imaginary, but insists the technique yielded valuable results for him.
Interesting. And he also notes this ability often comes later in life, like after 40.
Yeah, it seems to be something that matures with experience and dedicated effort over time.
Okay, so we've covered the 13 steps to riches, but there's one major obstacle he addresses separately at the end, right?
Indeed. The final section tackles fear, the enemy. He frames fear not as something external, but as a state of mind, and crucially, one you can control.
Through willpower.
Through conscious control and will.
Oh.
He identifies 6 main types, the 6 basic fears.
Let's see if I remember. Poverty,
Yep.
criticism, ill health,
Got it.
loss of love, old age, and death.
Those are the 6.
Yeah.
And he stresses how vital it is to recognize these fears in yourself, analyze them, understand how they operate in your own mind. That's the first step to conquering them.
And he talks about collective fear, too,
Yeah.
like the Wall Street crash.
Yeah, uses the 1929 crash and the Depression as a stark example of how mass fear, mass thought, can actually create devastating physical and economic reality. It's a powerful warning about the impact of collective negativity.
And he's pretty uncompromising, isn't he? Says there's no middle ground between poverty and riches. You have to actively refuse circumstances that lead to poverty.
Very resolute on that point. And he adds a 7th potential problem, susceptibility to negative influences, basically letting other people's negativity or doubts infect you.
You need to guard your mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He urges rigorous self-analysis to see if you're vulnerable here. Shield yourself from negative suggestions. He points to Edison, Woolworth, Washington people who succeeded despite negativity and criticism.
So at the end of the day, it all comes back to mind control.
That's the essence of it. Mind control through self-discipline, through building positive habits. Keep your mind busy with a definite purpose, focused on your plan. That's the best defense against fear and negativity.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot to absorb from this deep dive into Think and Grow Rich. If we had to pick, just say 2 or 3 really impactful takeaways for you listening, what would they be? For me, it's definitely that starting point. The power of a burning desire for something definite, and then backing it up with a real plan.
Yeah, that's huge. It's not just wishing, it's knowing what you want with intense clarity and belief.
And building that belief, that faith.
For me, another huge one is the potential locked up in your subconscious mind and your imagination. Learning to consciously direct your thoughts, feed your subconscious positivity, tap into that creative spark, that seems absolutely central to his whole philosophy.
So maybe take a moment now as you're listening and think, which of these principles really jumped out at you? Which one feels most relevant to where you are right now, what you're aiming for?
Perhaps you could even go back and look at those specific parts of the book, the ones that really sparked something for you.
Definitely. And just to leave you with something to chew on, a final thought.
What if mastering the landscape of your own mind, your own thoughts, what if that really is the ultimate key? Not just for money, but for unlocking a genuinely richer, more fulfilling life overall.
Something to think about. This deep dive, well, it's just scratched the surface, really.
Yeah.
There's always more to explore on this journey of learning and self-discovery.